We'll try and get. So thank you for coming. Obviously, we're from BMO, and we're going to do the financial education today. The topics that we're going to cover are budgeting, investing, and products offered by BMO. So if we can go to the next slide. So creating a household budget. So why should a person have a budget? It's basically to organize and manage your money. And budgets can look anyway. I know sometimes we'll have clients that come to the branch and want to help. There are help to set up a budget. And basically the budget is basically helping writing things down, looking at kind of your expenses, how much money is coming in, and just managing it all. It's not, I think some people overcomplex it. They think they have to put a lot of time and whatnot into it. But in essence, what you want to do is you want to reveal some waste. So if you're spending money maybe where you don't need to, it provides direction for you. It provides education. It creates good savings and spending habits. It reduces stress because if you're not like worrying about your money, at least you're managing a little bit better. It helps plan and make realistic goals, and it can help you prevent from overspending. So we'll get a little bit more into it in a sec here. So if you can go to the next slide. How do I decide what to spend my money on? So there's basically your needs, so things that you actually need for basic living, your housing, hydro, water, those kind of things. And then you got your wants. Sometimes people confuse the wants with the needs. A want might be something like internet. Well, it's not necessarily a need, but it is actually becoming a need. So there's certain expenses that can technically go into either category. So it all depends on the individual as well. Like if you're somebody who works from home, well, internet is probably needed and whatnot, right? So you kind of want to categorize those when you're doing your budget. If you can go to the next slide. So where does my money come from? So gross income, so that's income prior to taxes and any of the other deductions that come off your income. Net income is actually the amount that probably goes straight into your bank account or that you get by check or depending on how it is for you. And then discretionary income is basically the income that you have after spending, investing, and saving after taxes and necessities are paid. So that's the money, kind of the free money that you could play with per se. So if you can go to the next slide. Perfect. So as you can see, this is Joe. Let's assume we have Joseph here who has a net income of $3,000 after tax per month. So can you click on the next? There you go. Okay. So, and then a few more. One more. Yeah. Another one. One more. Perfect. Thank you. I think actually one more maybe. There you go. So basically in this example, Joseph has $1,000 that goes towards his housing, so rent or his mortgage. His food is $300, utilities and phone is $100, transportation $100, TV and streaming $50, dining out, entertainment $150, clothes $100, and child or pet $200. So that's kind of his spending. And then so you basically take that $3,000, you subtract those amounts out, and then that's going to be your discretionary income for the month. And then you have to budget from there. What are the important things? What are the things I want to actually have on a monthly basis? What are the things that I'd like to if I have some funds available? So, and then you kind of just basic that way. What you want to do when you're setting a budget up is you want to kind of make it for yourself. So if you're a person who gets bi-weekly payments, then you want to try and do your budget based on a bi-weekly basis. If you're somebody who gets income on a monthly basis, you're going to want to break it down on a monthly basis and then try and determine where things stand from that point. If we can go to the next slide, please. So why should I save my money? So if you have goals, make savings, your goals achievable. You want to look ahead, so you want to plan for your future. You want to be aware, avoid debt when emergencies arrive, and then potential, so to earn basically interest. One of the main things you want to do when you're save money. You want to save money for future goals, a trip, whatnot. But it's also good to have money saved for unnecessary things that come up that you weren't expecting. Like, I don't know, the furnace goes out or whatnot. You'd like to have that money so that you're not forced to borrow it at higher rates. And then somebody and then that just puts you in a tougher position. So if you can gradually, on a regular basis, whether it be biweekly, monthly, just put a little bit aside, kind of like a rainy day fund, it just helps you from getting into a pinch at moments that you could in the future. If you can go to the next slide. So why is savings important? So saving money helps you plan for the short and long term. So as I was just saying, if something comes up short term, but also long term, you could be talking something like retirement, wanting to take a trip a few years from now. You know your vehicle is only going to have 2-3 years left. You can kind of put those funds aside, and then that way it minimizes what you might have to borrow at that point. So short-term savings goals examples would be day-to-day expenses, emergency expenses, and upcoming large purchases such as a vehicle, as I just mentioned. So long-term savings goals examples would be saving towards your home. You want to have a down payment on the home, save for retirement, and increase net worth and grow your money. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So investing in your future. So we got an example here with Taylor. She's 25. She's curious about investing, but isn't familiar with the terminology and doesn't know which kind of investments are right for her. So this is very much, and I know Crystal's going to get a little bit into it a little bit more, but investments, it can be very complex, and I think it's very challenging for people because they don't know. A lot of people hear about mutual funds or stocks, and those can be extremely risky. But then there's also some very safe ones. And then you can have like just basic savings account with like, for example, a GIC, which is a guaranteed investment certificate where it's a locked in rate. And then you can have CDIC insurance, which is what we were just talking about a little bit earlier, which the government insures that money. So in essence, what CDIC insurance is the government, if, for example, BMO were to have a really tough time and they decide and they fold, like some companies will do, the government is backing that money so that you won't lose the money that was in the bank just because the bank had a hard time type thing. So they'll cover up to $100,000 per entity, and then BMO has 3 entities that you can kind of save that money under. So technically covering up to $300,000. Does anybody have any questions before I move on too far? Anything that we kind of reviewed so far? No? Okay. So why invest? If we can go to the next screen, please. Thank you. So investing helps grow your money is one of the main reasons. And then the earlier you invest, the more time your money has to grow. So if somebody starts investing at like 20 or 30, they're more likely to grow that amount, obviously based on time. So it's usually ideal to try and get it in as young as you can so that that money can grow. And if you see in this example, you have somebody, for example, that maybe started in 2023, they had $1,000. Also, depending on what you invest in, if you're able to take some risk, you'll see the one graph, it goes pretty high. That's somebody who's probably taking way more risk, which would be more something like equity mutual fund or stocks. If somebody wants just something really safe, unfortunately, their money's not going to grow as quickly, and that's that second line, the lower line. Oh, can you hit enter? I don't know if it's going to come up. Oh, no. On my slide, there was another line, and it was quite a bit lower than the other one. So, yeah, it didn't show up on that one screen, but it's showing up on our page here. So if you take more risk, the expectation is that you're going to get more return, but then you also have to be able to kind of manage those ups and downs that the markets might have, which again, Crystal will get into a little bit more in a moment. So on this slide here, getting ready to start investing. So you want to reduce high interest debt. You want to save cash to get started and do your research and seek advice. So that's where, when we say seek advice, we have personal bankers, PBAs, and financial planners in the branches. They can provide that advice. What we would do is go through an assessment with the individuals to see what they're comfortable with. What I'm comfortable with might be something totally different than what somebody else might be comfortable with. We have some clients that they want only guaranteed rates. They don't want to lose money, where I'm a little bit more risky. I've lost money in the past. I know my wife one time got quite upset with me with the amount I lost on an investment, Nortel, years ago. So if you get into tech stocks and whatnot, you can lose quite a bit, but the upside is still there as well. So it's all dependent on the individual. Can I take a lot of risk? Yes, but maybe somebody else can't. Can you go to the next slide, please? Nope. Can we move to the next slide? Oh yeah, perfect, thank you. And this is the last slide that I'm going to review. So what if I just kept my savings in cash? Cash is tangible. You can lose it or have it stolen, and it will lose value. So by having some people are old school and they like having cash either at home or whatnot. The challenge is that it could get stolen or house fire or whatnot, and then you lose that because you don't have that. But the other thing is it loses value just based on inflation. So something that I think everybody has bought in groceries over the last, see how much the grocery prices have gone up. If you keep it at home, you're not making money, so it's not keeping up with that inflation. So in essence, you're automatically losing right from the beginning. So that's the ideal scenarios, to have it in something that's going to at least earn you some returns. So that's it for my part. I will pass it on to Crystal.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to try and speak into this as much as I can. My voice doesn't carry as well. So yeah, I'm the financial planner at Bank of Montreal in North Bay. So I do specialize a little bit more in investing, long-term planning, retirement planning, investment planning. I do help clients plan for their future, short, medium, long-term goals, plan for your retirement, plan to help fund that retirement, and just manage your cash flow. So as Mark was mentioning does everybody know what inflation is? The steady cost increase in goods and services. A steady increase in cost of goods and services, it usually is about a 2%. That's the average increase in inflation each year. So if you're keeping your money in your bank account, if you're keeping your money under your mattress, it's not going to keep up with that 2% inflation. So our goal is to help you keep up with that at minimum, and hopefully do much better than that. So I'm going to get into a little bit more about investing with you guys. Just kind of go over the basics. So, isn't investing risky? Just that last slide there. I didn't even talk about it. So some investments can go up and down in value. And then as Mark mentioned, some investments have varying levels of risk. So depending on what you're putting your money into, there could be some investments that are safe, secure. There's going to be some that are very risky. Now I'm ready, sorry. So what can you invest in? So cash and cash equivalents are going to be the least risky. So you've got your scale there. GICs stands for Guaranteed Investment Certificates, and bonds. Those are going to be on the lower risk side. Physical assets, so real estate. Some people like to buy real estate as a form of investing, or physical gold, which I don't really see any of that these days, but some people like it. It is a lot less risky than you've got your mutual funds, your stocks, and your crypto. We're going to get into what mutual funds are in a minute. And then stocks can also be called equities. We'll get into what those are in a moment as well. We do not sell cryptocurrency at the bank, so I won't be diving into that any deeper, but that's considered the most risky type of investment. You can continue. Where to start? So preparing to invest. Step one, start small and go from there. Understanding the risk involved, talking to a professional, understanding where you're putting your money. Some people will go online and they'll start going on Questrade and they'll buy a bunch of stocks and not really knowing what they're buying into. So having a professional just speak to you, further your understanding onto what investing is, where you're putting your money. That would be a good place to start. Someone like myself. Next slide. So that brings me to what is a stock? Does anybody have any stocks, individual stocks out there? No? Okay. So when you buy a stock, so specifically here at Bank of Montreal, I don't help you buy individual stocks. It's more on like the Questrade platforms or self-directed stock purchasing platforms. But when you buy a stock, you buy a piece of ownership in a company, and when the value of that company rises or falls, so does that stock. So there is some risk involved with buying stocks. It is a way to possibly grow your money if the value of the stock grows. And stocks typically have a high growth potential over the longer term. So when you buy into a stock, because it can fluctuate in value a lot more than something safe like a GIC or a bond, they're typically more of a longer term investment. When you look at something like an index chart, when you look at the long term, buying stocks will generally perform much better for you over a longer period of time. So stocks are generally something that you buy to hold for many, many years. Stocks are also called equities. So if you're ever looking at, we'll get into mutual funds in a second, sometimes they're referred to as equities. What are bonds? So a bond, you can think of it basically as a loan between a borrower, typically a corporation or government, and investor. The borrower agrees to pay back the original value of the loan on a specific date and pay you interest payments along the way. So bonds are generally secure, but they're not entirely risk-free. So there is some potential that the value of the bond could go up or down and that you could lose money on your initial investment. Next, please. What is a mutual fund? So this is what I help clients with more so at the bank. Think of a mutual fund as a basket of many, many stocks or bonds. So mutual funds are professionally managed. There's going to be somebody picking and choosing how the pool of money is invested. So they will constantly monitor what's going on in the world. Maybe the Canadian market is doing better than the US market. And they're going to change how those investments are allocated within the fund. So with that professional management, there's typically a fee involved to have them do that work for you. It's kind of like a one-stop shop. You don't have to put any thought into the process. You put your money into it, and it'll do the work for you. Mutual funds can vary in risk level, but they're usually much safer than buying individual stocks. So if you're somebody that wants to grow your money more than investing into something safer like a GIC, you can buy mutual funds and know that it's going to be safer than buying individual stocks because you're not putting your money in just one basket. You're putting your money into many, many baskets. And basically, a mutual fund is just a bunch of investors pooling their money together, and they're equally buying into that fund of stocks and bonds. What is a GIC? So a GIC, like I mentioned before, stands for Guaranteed Investment Certificate. This is for safer investors. So you do not take on any risk when you invest in a GIC. If you have $1,000 and you put that into a GIC, you get your $1,000 back. Generally, you get a guaranteed rate of return on a GIC. So you're not only going to get your principal back, but you also get that guaranteed return at the end of the term. So GICs can be locked in for a certain period of time, or they can be accessible. So typically, if it's locked in, the longer you lock it in for, usually the higher return you get. If it is accessible, which sometimes is the case, you still will get a guaranteed rate of return, but it's usually a lot lower than it were if you were to lock it in. Terms can be as short as 1 year, and they can be as long as 10 years. And there's usually a minimum investment amount, which is usually $1,000 for GICs. And we were talking about CDIC insurance earlier. So if you're investing in a GIC, you do get that insurance knowing that your money is insured. So no matter what, if Bank of Montreal goes under, your money is protected up to a certain limit. And then GICs typically do not grow as much as stocks and mutual funds over the long term. So I gave you guys actually a handout. Oh, geez, I keep leaning on this table. Like it's going to take me out. Yeah, this one here. Return of GICs versus Canadian equity mutual funds. I just wanted to give you guys an example of what you can expect on both ends of the spectrum. So if you went with something nice and safe, like a GIC, that's going to be your yellow line. So This is over a 5-year performance. If you're investing in 1-year GICs and you started with a $10,000 initial investment, at the end of 5 years, you're going to have 11,171. This is an example between 2018 and 2023. So your total return on investment was 11.71%, which works out to 2.24% year over year. So you're at least keeping up with inflation there. So it's definitely better than doing nothing, investing in GICs. You'll see there the line there, the yellow, it does not go down in value at all. It just steadily increases. And then you've got your blue line. So this is specifically a Canadian equity mutual fund. So this is Canadian stocks. You can choose mutual funds that have Canadian stocks and US stocks. I'll go into that a little bit further in detail if you were to come in and see me. We dive a little bit deeper into what type of mutual funds are out there, but this is specifically an example on Canadian stocks. So you'll see between 2018 and 2023, there's lots of ups and downs. So if you started with 10,000, there's going to be times where you might have less than what you started with. But at the end of 5 years, the end result is $13,531. So a total return on investment of 35%, which is annualized at 6.23%. And so this gives you an example of the benefit of being invested longer term in a mutual fund, and the difference between a mutual fund and a GIC, kind of what you can expect with volatility. That's what we call the fluctuations in the value of your investment is volatility. And we'll have to make this accessible for those online. Somehow we'll send that out. Okay, next. So I'm going to get into different types of plans, different types of accounts that you can put your money into. Starting with an RSP. Everybody is familiar with RSPs. They've been around for a really long time. It stands for Registered Retirement Savings Plan. RSPs are savings plans offered through the government, but they can be opened at your bank, Bank of Montreal. They are typically used to provide income in retirement. So think of it kind of as you're saving for your pension, something to give you a steady cash flow once you've retired. Contributions to an RSP can be deducted from your taxable income in the year that you contributed. There is usually a maximum per year. And the money contributed to an RSP can be invested and grow tax-free until it's withdrawn. So once you've put your money into your RSP, that money that's sitting in there, if it's going to be in there for 20 years before you start taking it out, it's usually a good idea to invest it in something that it can grow while it sits there. And all of that growth becomes tax-free growth for you until you have to take it out down the road in retirement. The amount that you take out in the year that you take it out is the amount that's taxable. So if you say at 65 years old, want to start taking out from your RSP for retirement, maybe you're taking out $20,000 a year, that $20,000 becomes a taxable income for you that year. The intent is to reduce your taxable income in the higher income earning years while you're employed, and then to increase your income in your lower income years. So this is kind of an older way for people to contribute to the RSP while they're earning lots of money. Maybe they're in their employment years and they need a little bit of a reduction on their taxable income. And then the intention is to take it out after you've retired. Your income is lower and the tax burden isn't as high. Of course. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it all depends. I find whenever I'm comparing RSPs to what's called a tax-free savings account, and I think that's going to be our next slide or the one after. Nowadays, now that the TFSA is out there, I find that to be a better account to invest into, unless you're somebody that's earning $200,000 plus taxable income and you have no pension through your employer, then maybe an RSP might be the better route. It's usually dependent on the individual. But good question. Next. So an RSP, once you've reached the age of 71, you have to convert an RSP to what's called a RIF. The government makes you take out income each year after the age of 71, and you can no longer make RSP contributions at that point. It stands for Registered Retirement Income Fund. There is a minimum amount that has to be taken out each year, and you can take out more. Some of my clients do take out more depending on what their cash flow is like. And then the amount that you take out is considered taxable income for the year. It can still invest within a RIF, so you can still grow that money tax-free until you have to take it out each year. But usually in those years, it's a little bit safer because now you've grown it all those years and you want to kind of preserve all of that growth as you're starting to take it out as a cash flow. Next slide should be TFSA. So this is what I had mentioned earlier. Tax-free savings account came out in 2009. So it's a little bit more of a modern savings account. I like to call it a tax-free investment account because as soon as clients hear savings account, they think, oh, it's just a regular savings account and I can put money in there and take it out as I need it for my short-term spending needs. But I usually suggest you put money into a tax-free savings account, and that's the last place you want to touch it because all of that growth within a tax-free savings account is key where they're tax-free. And when you take it out, you don't have to pay any tax on it either. You don't get a tax deduction for your contributions to a tax-free like you do with the RSP. So if you're somebody that's looking to reduce your taxable income, tax-free savings account isn't going to do that for you. There is an annual contribution limit. However, if you've never contributed, then you get all of the space going back to 2009, which is up to this year, $95,000 that you can put into a tax-free if you haven't done that already before. You do need to be at least 18 for tax-free, and your contribution space starts the year that you turn 18. So if you're 19, you can't go back to 2009. You only get the contribution space from the year that you turn 18. And then as far as withdrawals go, it is tax-free. If I have a client that has, for example, maxed out their tax-free at $95,000 and they want to take some money out in any given year, they have to wait until the next calendar year to recontribute that money. That's the only downside to withdrawals. I'm just going to grab some water. I'm dry. Any questions while I'm doing this? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, so key thing is there, how I usually structure that tax-free savings is I, again, go by your short, medium, and long-term goals. So if you know you've got short-term spending plans, you're going to want to keep that short-term spending money in something safe and something accessible. So if you're looking at maybe GICs within a tax-free savings account, because you can do that. You can invest in GICs, mutual funds, stocks, bonds, all of that within a tax-free. You're going to want to make sure that you're not locking all of your money into GICs for 1, 2, 3 years if you're going to need to take some money out in the short term, because then you wouldn't be able to take it out if it was in a GIC. So a little bit more of a complex conversation where we would get into those short, medium, and long term. But as long as that money is accessible, it's not in a locked-in GIC, you can take it out, no tax consequence. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. And then, so if I usually have a needs-based discussion with the clients. If they're putting 50 in, we discuss, do you have something that you want to buy in the next year? And if they know, okay, I've got 30,000 that I need to spend on a car in the next year, I'd probably recommend like an accessible GIC, something that you can get at short-term, safe, and secure. Mutual funds, the one that was talking about earlier, that's also liquid anytime. It's not locked in. So if you're looking at more of a longer-term investment solution, and you don't want to lock in your money, mutual funds are a good route too. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. All of the yeah. So it's got to be RSP money that's been converted to a RIF. Yeah. The RIF is the end stage of an RSP. So it's once.
So then when they put our fees in there while they're working, and now you're going to rip now, and they're taking money.
Like what I'm trying to envision in my head is saying I max out my gift and say I've never had a failure, I've done before. I put the 90,000 in, and I still have some more. And I do it with.
So what a RIF is it's an RSP that you convert over to something that you start drawing an income from. So if you wanted a RIF, you'd have to basically contribute to an RSP first and then convert it. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that could be good too, because they would get the tax deduction the year that they contribute to the RSP, and then it would create kind of like an income. Yeah, if they're already tax free, then yeah, there's not really a benefit to the deduction then in that case. Yeah, but it would create a steady income cash flow too in retirement. Yeah, and if we're looking at with investments, if you're looking for something with a cash flow, there's also a non-registered investment account too. So registered plans are RSPs and tax-free savings accounts. And then there's something called non-registered. The income, the growth on the investment is typically cash or taxable, but if you're in a position where it's not taxable, you can draw from that type of investment on an annual basis as well, and it would grow for you. And I think that might be probably the best option in that case. Yeah. So probably tax-free savings would be first and foremost, and then non-registered from there. Yeah. Okay, next slide. RESP. So this is another type of registered plan. It's a registered education savings plan. And this is an account that's used to save money for a child's education. Again, the money contributed to this type of account can be grown, and it'll be tax-free until it's withdrawn. However, there's no tax deduction again for contributions. The government actually, the big benefit of an RESP is that the government matches 20% of your contributions each year up to a $7,200 limit per child over their lifetime. So up to $500 a year. So if you contribute $2,500 a year to an RESP, you're going to get that max 20% because the government will give you $500 of that $2,500 each year, up to the limit of $7,200. So if you're looking to save money for a child's education, RESP is a great way to go because you're going to get that 20% kickback from the government. And then you can grow that money tax-free up until the child goes to school. When that money is withdrawn, the grants and the growth are taxable at the child's hand if they're in a taxable position. And then there is the max limit of 50 per child over their lifetime. Next slide. Oh, that's it for me. So we'll take some Q&A at the end. And then Mark will take it from here.
Thank you. So just a couple more slides. In the package we gave you, there's this sheet here, and that's where I'm kind of getting. So banking products offered by BMO. So BMO is proud to offer a program with preferred discounts on financial products and services for Indigenous customers on and off reserve. And that's what this is. So that sheet will give you the details. So in essence, we're providing banking with no monthly plans for a year. And oftentimes at the branch level, we could do other stuff for you to maybe make it where you're not paying fees at all. Access to your credit score online. It's becoming fairly common amongst all the banks that you can get your credit score online right on the website. Savings accounts and GIC products with competitive interest rates, as Crystal mentioned. Add additional checking accounts for your family members for no additional fee. So the one thing that with the one package is you can have you're getting the free banking. You can have like 15 accounts attached to it. Some people like to have like accounts for different purposes. You can have for your family members or for yourself. You can have all those, and it's all covered under the no fee plan. Unlimited transactions and Interact e-transfers, so that's included as well. And then something obviously common nowadays is 24/7 access to your money through online banking, mobile banking app. Next slide, please. And then that's it. So we want to thank you for your time. Obviously, we're going to go through some questions and answers in a moment. I did want to, Tammy, you did mention that, yeah, the tax exempt, if you have tax exempt, chances are you're not going to want to do RSPs. It makes sense. So the one thing that we at the branch, whether it be Susan or Crystal or myself or any advisor, whether you're dealing at BMO or another financial institution, the goal of that advisor is to make sure that they're providing advice specific to you. So that's why we're talking about expertise and whatnot. When we're dealing with the client, the way my perspective I take, not all bankers will, but the perspective that I take is I'm not working for the bank, I'm working for the client. And it's the client's needs. So I want to assess what's important to them to determine the best way we can help them. So whether it be bank accounts, lending, investments, and whatnot. So when Crystal sees the client, it's more about investments, but what she's going to do is specifically identify what you're comfortable with, what your needs might be. And then it could be a number of things. So like, for example, tax-free savings account would probably be your primary objective to use or product to use. But then you could do like non-registered. If you say you have more than 90,000, you have 150,000 you want to invest, the other 60 could be non-registered. You're kind of using the tax-free savings account to get tax-exempt growth, but then you could just do the other part. So there's other products and services that could be used. But the main thing that we want to be doing is we're assessing your own needs and we're helping you achieve your own goals, whether it be buying a house later on, investing for your future, retirement, that kind of thing. So thank you for your time. I'm not sure if anybody has other questions or answers or questions, and we'll answer them. Sorry. I know there were some questions throughout the process, but and then that's the other thing. If you don't think of something now, we do have cards, business cards here. Feel free to give us a call if you want to come in the branch. We're always accessible that way. But we'll take a call and go through something with you because we're bankers and we've been dealing, some of us less time in the bank than others, but we go through a lot of training and it could be complex for us. So for the average person, we can understand there's complexities there. And what our goal is to make it as easy as possible for you when you come to the branch, when you have any questions. Because in the end, we want to make sure that you achieve your goals and then satisfy your needs. Yes. Absolutely, definitely. They can call directly. Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Oh, thank you. This is actually my sheet. So this is what I provide as a service for clients at the bank. And what exactly does a financial planner do? And right built into that sheet on the back is my contact information. So if you did have any questions, maybe you want to ask personally, you can call me, you can email me, whichever works best. And like Mark said, I treat every client as individual. Everybody's situation is different. So it's definitely not a cookie cutter approach. Every client is different. So that's why sometimes a financial planner is a good route to go. We just look at things a little bit differently and yeah, try to answer your questions as best as we can and keep it as simple and easy as possible. Sure. Yes. Yes, as long as you don't go over the max contribution limit. Yes. 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 Yeah, and that's fine. It's just then you've I find having it in one place is a little easier just to keep track of how much you have contributed. But you still will get a report each year from the CRA as to where you're at, what you've put in, and what your limit is, if they are at different institutions. So that's right. Yes. And the also good benefit of a tax-free savings as opposed to something like a non-registered account is you can actually add a beneficiary onto a tax-free savings. So if your intention is to grow that account, maybe to the benefit of somebody else, or you just want to know that if you pass, that money goes to somebody, you can add somebody to that account as a beneficiary. It doesn't go through any will process or anything like that. It bypasses all of that and it goes directly to that beneficiary. So another key benefit of the tax-free savings.
Unfortunately, because it's all based on the government, you can't like have one, double up and have it as different. You can't have it as just the overall limit still.
Mm-hmm.
We have
Right.
clients, the challenge and what Crystal said, having to have one, it makes it easier. In the first few years when they were created, you had clients that had some on one and another, and then they go do their maximum contribution for that next year at one point. They didn't realize they were already close to the limit, and then they got taken by the government because then they were over. The government wanted to penalize them for over contributing. The first few years, they were a little bit lenient on the penalties that they would charge clients. Oftentimes, we would work on clients' behalf to make sure they didn't get dinged, say if they didn't understand. So we're trying to help them not have to pay that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely you can do that for sure. You can definitely, yeah. If you don't think you can use it for me, you could do like a non-registered, just for let's say a monthly, so that you're getting a little bit. But yes, there's also savings plans now over the last few years, now that the inflation rate has gone up quite a bit, that you can get almost like 5% on a bank account. Usually it's only for a short period of time, but at least it's an option. Yeah.
Just so that you don't get a big deal from CRA.
Exactly.
So you're not going over.
No, exactly. You just have that extra money aside. Yeah. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
can do that.
Yeah, and each year, the only place is the TFSA where you can kind of evade taxes in any sort of situation. Are you thinking as far as, yeah,
So I took my money, my pension money, I
Mhm.
But still have things that they can get. Okay. And I have an set aside for tax savings. Yeah. But if that for each one of your things, I'm gonna look at.
Like you'll have the overall amount. So let's assume, I don't know if it's been mentioned how much money, let's assume 150,000 is the number you have available to you guys. So yeah, you put your 90,000 into a tax savings account. You can leave that 60,000 account. The only thing you're going to be taxed on is the interest. The government's not going to touch that 60,000. They'll only touch if you make 1,000 a year. You're going to be taxed on that 1,000. So the other money is safe.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, the government can't take money, the other money at all.
Yeah.
The government can't take as much as it can. No, but I told you, yeah, for sure. No, you can put it in, the government's not allowed to tax that. Only, you don't need to pay taxes, or the government's going to want you to pay taxes on the money you're making. So, Kristen mentioned everything I mentioned.
Yeah, so the TFSA too, it's each year the government will give you a limit that you can put in. So this year's limit was 7,000. So if I have a client, I've met with them, we've put in their max of 95,000. That's it for the year. But as soon as January comes around, we can put in another 7. So I usually do my tax-free savings account top-ups as soon as we can do it. So if we've got the limit available in January, I am working 8:30 to 7 most days in January, topping up tax-free savings accounts as much as possible, just to get you that tax-free growth ASAP.
So the money will be in that bank account, and then every year, you put that extra.
Mhm.
Eventually, if you don't use it for something.
Yeah, that 95 is just up till this year because that's all the contribution space going back to 2009. So if there's years that you've put some money into tax-free and you haven't contributed in some years, then you probably don't have all of that 95,000 in space. And then each year, once you've maxed it out, once you no longer have any space, then we just go by the annual limit every year.
One thing I did want to mention, you mentioned taking money out of the tax savings. If you take that out, let's assume you had 90,000 in there, you put 30,000 out, you only need it for a bit. If you take that 30,000 out, that gets added to the next year's limit. So you get 7,000 plus 30 to the year before. 37,000. You can only use the microphone. Because the government lets you put money you took out back in. So, for example, we have clients that if they got into our tax-free savings accounts when they started and they're putting it in mutual funds where they're getting 10% per year, their 90,000 could be like 200,000 now. And then they take 50,000 out and somehow they come up with 50,000 from something later on. They could put that back in if they needed that 50,000, say to help a child buy a house, whatever. If the child pays you back after some time or whatnot, because they come into money, you can definitely put it back in the tax-free savings account. So that's the benefit. I think the tax-free savings account has become one of the primary areas for people to put money in because your growth is what you're not paying taxes on. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Oh, they can't hear you? Yeah, for sure. Anybody have any more questions?
Sorry about that. I don't really think there is anything else that we had mentioned that wasn't into the microphone about that tax-free savings bit.
I don't think so.
No, I think that was it.
Maybe just figure straight that if they haven't heard that part about if you had a tax-free savings account,
Your new room? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And took it out. Yeah. And I think I touched upon it in the presentation a little bit, but yeah, the only with the TFSA is once you've reached your limit, you have to wait until the calendar year, the next year, to put more money into it, unless if you've come into a situation where you have to take money out of a tax-free, you can do so. no penalization there whatsoever, no taxable consequence, but you do have to wait until the following calendar year to recontribute that money. So if you've got 50,000 in there, or well, no, if you've maxed it out, let's say, for example, 95,000, and you take 50,000 out, you cannot put that 50,000 back in until next year, 2025, plus your next year's limit for the year that the government's given you.
I think so.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Any other questions or? No? All good? Excellent. Well, thank you everybody
Yeah,
for
thank you.
coming out. And like we say, we're going to provide our phone numbers and whatnot. We're always available to answer any questions. What we want to do is make sure that everybody gets the advice they need. One thing that I also didn't mention that everybody, I think all advisors should have that philosophy, but sometimes you meet a banker or whatnot that you just don't gel with. There's other bankers either at that same institution or another one that's willing to help you. So it's just like buying a car. Sometimes you don't like that salesperson, but this person's a little bit better. So don't be shy to reach out for advice from somebody else if you don't think you're getting the proper advice that you should be getting. Because my opinion is when we got into these roles, it's not fun to work for a bank most of the time because there's a lot of pressure on us and whatnot. But the best thing that we all tend to like doing is dealing with the individuals and helping them achieve their goals. So that's what it should be all about. And that's what we try to strive for. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.